This is Jared with Smart Group Training and the Elite Training Mentorship. I want to cover the 4 stages of learning and different intervention strategies that we can take clients through basically each stage of learning. So there's going to be 4 stages that I want to cover. So let's go ahead and start with the next one, which is going to just be the first one, which is stage 1. So this is our unconscious dysfunction. These are our clients that whenever they come into the facility, that they're moving dysfunctionally, and they just don't know it. So it's like they don't know they're doing something bad, and there's not pain present. There's nothing to make them think that they're doing something bad, and it's our job to find out. So let's go to the next stage. The next stage is going to be conscious dysfunction. So now the client or athlete, they know that they're in a dysfunctional pattern. We have taken our time to point them out. Stage 3 is going to be conscious function. So now we do our jobs as coaches and we're able to get them into a functional pattern, a functional capacity. And then our end goal is going to be stage 4, which is unconscious function. So we want them to be able to perform and do very complex things, or even very simple things, but to have those things happen, boom, in a snap, and happen unconsciously. So let's see what we got on the next one. So let's actually go back to the first slide. So go back to stage 1. Let's talk just a little bit about each stage a little bit more in depth. So we have our unconscious dysfunction. So these are the clients, athletes that they're moving dysfunctionally and they just don't know it. We want to make sure that we identify this. A lot of the times how we get that client or athlete to find out that they are moving dysfunctionally, one, we use the FMS in this facility. So the FMS does a great job of identifying and letting somebody understand to move them from stage 1 to stage 2. We need some sort of strategy to make sure that they know that they're moving dysfunctionally. Here at this facility, it's going to be the FMS, or it could be the first training session. So the first training session that you're going through and you talk to the client or athlete and let them know, hey, this isn't how you squat, or this is going on, your knee's caving in, just giving the verbal cues. Moving somebody from stage 1 to stage 2 is fairly easy. So stage 2, we've got our conscious dysfunction. These are where the clients and athletes, they know they're moving poorly. Let's just bypass this. So now, let's talk about intervention strategies so we actually know what to take. How to take somebody from the first stage to the second stage, second to third to our final. So there's 3 main intervention strategies I want to talk about. It's going to be to move between those stages. There's unique differences I've already talked about a little bit, and then sometimes it's going to come down to more than what we do in here. Sometimes it's going to come down to the big world outside, because there's a lot of outside factors that could be influencing what we're trying to accomplish in the gym. So we've got the first one here, the unconscious dysfunction to conscious function. So I listed out, I already talked about the initial screening and assessment, verbal cueing, so that could be like that first session I talked about. Coach's Eye is another great tool you can use. So it's just an app we got on our phone. If a client or athlete isn't really seeing what's going on, you're verbally cueing them, you've taken them through the FMS and they still just don't get it. Coach's Eye is a great tool for that. A lot of the things, if we're working with somebody coming in, the slow, steady movements, it's a lot easier to know that you are doing something wrong whenever we point it out. However, if we've got somebody that is moving well and they've got a good base, but then we're starting to get into hang cleans, hang snatches, anything in there, something explosive, powerful, and there's a little dysfunction going on, sometimes it's really hard to just verbally cue them and let them feel it. So that's where Coach's Eye can come in. We can actually video them and be like, see how the bar is drifting away from the body. See how you're doing this. We can show them that dysfunction so that basically is going to move them to the next stage. So very easy on this stage. We identify the problem and we just let them know and let them see what's going on. The next stage is a little more difficult. This is our conscious dysfunction to conscious function stage. So we need to take somebody, now we have shown them that they are making a mistake or doing something that we don't want to see in the training session. And we need to take them to the level that they can actually fix it. So coaching, some manual hands-on techniques are going to be great. The mobility, stability, performance, if you relate that to the FMS and what we use here, that's just going to be taking care of pod 1, our straight leg raise, our shoulder mobility. Then we move into the stability aspects. And then the performance is just basically tying it all together. So our squatting, our stepping, our lunging. We need to make sure that we follow the hierarchy. We start to pull away those basic dysfunctions that can be limiting them. So we might verbally tell them, hey, get your hip through, but their hip just doesn't move that way. We need to either refer them out so we can get some manual hands-on techniques, do whatever, the corrective exercise selections we're going to do here, so their body can actually move and stabilize the way we want it to. And that's going to be where the functional stage. So now we use our mobility, stability, performance. We just build them from the ground up until they're able to be at a higher level of function. Now they can get there, but they have to really think and focus about it. So it's whenever you're first learning something and you're really focusing on that task, think about how much thought process has to go into it. So there's a lot of consciousness going into getting into proper form and function. So we just need to make sure that we choose the proper exercise selections that are going to elicit the change that we want for the positive. So this stage is pretty much what we do in here on a day-to-day basis. The first two, moving on honestly from stage 1 to stage 3, we do a really, really good job at that here. The area that we do a great job here, but everybody needs to improve on, is going to be this final stage. Because this final stage is where it starts to tie in a lot more than just training underneath the roof of this gym. This is where a lot of the times we need things to happen from that conscious. I have to actually put my thought into performing, into it just naturally happens. This is just something that goes down. So if I have to drop down and pick something up, I'm dropping down into more of a deadlift pattern instead of getting all snarky and grabbing whatever from the ground. So we got some things to look at. High threshold, I know I've brought it up in multiple training topics here as we've gone over things, is we need to make sure our clients and athletes aren't bracing and stressing for everything. There is a time and a place for that. If we're getting ready to lift real heavy, sure, we want to brace and we can get into a high threshold strategy. That strategy is there, 1, to perform, 2, to protect ourselves. But if we're trying to do basic function like a bird dog to where we're on all 4, or a straight leg raise where we're just trying to basically pick an arm up or pick a leg up, we need to have that happen on an unconscious function, and we need to have that happen on a low threshold. You need to be able to breathe in each one of those. So we've got an in-service on the Elite Training Mentorship, if you want to go back to it, breathing by position. That is where we start to get out of this high threshold. We start to dial in the proper nervous system. That way we're not stuck in fight or flight, and our brains can actually adapt to the stimulus we're trying to do. So those are the threshold, the breathing, the nervous system. After we start to get there, some reaction training to where I want to see the desired effect. So if I'm working sports and performance, I can start doing pointing a direction they go. I want to see if I cue them, boom, they're able to maintain a stable knee, but then all of a sudden I add a direction and we get collapse. I know they're still in conscious function because they can think about it and give me what I want. But whenever I start to throw something random at them, now it starts to go back to basically the dysfunction level. So they're at the conscious function level. We need to figure out the way to get them there. We address this. We do different things, whether it's visual, verbal, get their mind going and make them actually react to what we're trying to do, because that can really help sync that pattern in their brain. And if they don't get it, that's where we just go back, use the same intervention strategies in the one before, the coaching, the cueing, the hands-on technique. You can pull out the coach's eye app. So all those kind of get into here. Next, the lifestyle and ergonomics. Sometimes they're not going to get there because we might be trying to work mobility and they have dysfunctional breathing patterns, they're in bad posture. we need to start looking into what's going on. So we're able to take them into, let's say we're working on a straight leg raise, it's that client that comes in, they come in, they're always ones, we work with them, they're twos before they leave, but every single time they come back, they're ones. Something's going on away from here, because apparently every time they're here, we do the right stuff, and we get them to a functional capacity where we want, but they leave our doors and they go back to this. So this is where we might want to look at what they do for a job. The ergonomics could be like, do they sit at a desk twisted with their neck on a phone? So it's like, a lot of the times there's different strategies, different things going on away from here that we just need to start to identify and see if there's anything that we can do to move them into the unconscious function. Hands down, this is the most difficult stage to get them into, but the unconscious function level, if you would look at the picture I had of the Olympic snatcher, he had a lot of weight over his head. There's no way he can just be consciously thinking, I need first pull second. He can't consciously think about that. It has to happen perfectly in sequence to get that amount of weight over his head. So this is where, if we want to be performing at our best, staying injury-free and high level of performance, we need to get our clients and athletes to the unconscious function stage. So think about which stage your client's in, some of those intervention strategies, and how you can move them from one stage to the next. One final thought is sometimes you may get them here in the unconscious function level. You still want to make sure we're going through regular screening and assessment too, because things happen in the outside world. They may have got knocked in the head, they could have got a concussion, they could have got some little injury, sprained an ankle. Little things like that can totally throw off the way our movement patterns go and throw you from the unconscious function all the way back down to, okay, I used to be able to do that, but now I don't even know. I got valgus at my knee because some outside force happened. So make sure we're always doing our constant screening assessments. We try to move our clients and athletes to that unconscious function level, identify what stage they're at, and start incorporating the intervention strategies to move them into that unconscious function level. And that's basically different intervention strategies to think about and how to progress somebody from the first stage to the final stage.